Hey guys, how are we all doing today? All good? Right, so thanks for that introduction. Walgreens Boots Alliance, where I previously worked, I'll give you a little bit about the dimensions of that company. So they were, or are, a $140 billion company. They've got almost 20,000 retail and pharmacy outlets globally when one includes the equity method investments. 400 distribution centers at one point in time. And myself, I've just returned back from Chicago, having spent 7 years out there, of which 5 I was Chief Procurement Officer. That's kind of part of a long planned return. So, part of my readjustment is I'm having to learn to stop saying certain phrases and words, and it's kind of quite difficult. I never kind of got the hang of some of them anyway, so I never could say the word schedule. I never really got that one. There'll be no more spitballing, you'll all be glad to know. And, I don't have to kind of figure out what a boondoggle is. Anybody know what a boondoggle is? Anybody? One at the back? Does somebody want to shout it out? Say again. Perfect. Thank you. And moreover, and you'll be really pleased to know, I'm not going to get the words trousers and pants confused anymore, right? Just to avoid any embarrassment. As we were just saying, I've kind of worked for a number of sort of blue chip companies. I've worked extensively globally, North America, Latin America, Eastern and Western Europe. I spent an awful lot of time out in China and Southeast Asia over the years. And I've got some kind of viewpoints of things. So if I may, I've called this Procurement 101, which it may or may not be. You can be the judge of that. But many of us, I suspect, have been guilty of overlooking some of these kind of principles that I'm going to kind of share. And that's kind of okay. I'm certainly not asking everybody to agree with me. Really, I'm not going to give any answers either. I'm just going to kind of provoke some thoughts, give you some things to consider. And as I say, this is just my viewpoint. So, just some thoughts here about, what should procurement's role be within the organization? And, as a CPO that may be new in role, I think this is kind of a number one question. And you've got to figure out how do you best add value to your organization. So, and kind of as part of that, what does the organization actually want from procurement? Does it actually know? You actually kind of stop to think about that and say, well, what's actually the function's objective here? And even if you've got some fantastic views and dreams, what you believe procurement should be about, does the organization actually even care? Is it actually interested in that? And it's certainly, or I suspect, as we were saying earlier on, that it's not really interested in the procurement speak. What it's interested in is the return. What is it that procurement are going to execute on for our business that will improve our performance, be it profit making or non-profit making? And I think on the point around is it well informed and does it get procurement, I think one of our roles as senior procurement leaders is to seek out those people that really do get procurement and really do understand it, particularly at a senior and exec level. Because you work closely with those, you use that relationship and you leverage that relationship to enable you to deliver on what you need to deliver. I think the point around informing or reforming opinions on procurement's raison d'etre is super important as well. What's your ability to actually change the viewpoint of what people feel about procurement at a senior level within your organization? Anybody want to offer a viewpoint on that? Don't be shy. Yes? No? Maybe? What do you think? Do you think that there are certain organisations where the impact of procurement is never going to be understood and that your ability to actually change that viewpoint is very limited? Or do you believe that senior procurement leaders have the ability to change an organisation? Can I get one or two views? Don't be shy. Simon Gill, I know you'll have a viewpoint on this.
I believe you can influence and change.
Why do you believe that?
Because I'm a believer. that's what I spend my career doing.
Okay.
I believe you can do it, but, sometimes it's a long haul.
Yeah. Any other viewpoints on that?
Yeah, I'll have a go. I'm a relative newcomer to the world of procurement. I work for Workday, an outsourcing platform, because they acquired a company called Scout. And I've seen, because I've had to research what I do, and I've seen a big change in terms of what procurement used to be, which was essentially a back office kind of function, and they're now much more a partner to the business, and they have the whole ESG kind of remit to be a better department for all.
Okay. So, sorry, the viewpoint here was the role of procurement's changed and more influential, broader role, much less tactical than in the past. And I guess for every business it's different. Lots of businesses have been doing a fantastic job of procurement for many, many years. So here, let me move on a little bit here. What is your focus? So is it all about P&L? So is your role in procurement about helping and enabling the company to grow the top line? In my last organisation, we helped the company grow top line by several $1 billion through the procurement organisation. We also helped improve the bottom line by over $1 billion. So is it all around P&L? Is it about innovation? Is it about mitigating supply risk in some of the challenging times that we heard about in the previous session? Is it all about the sustainability agenda? Is it about a digital transformation? I think you, as a senior leader, you have to kind of figure this out. Where's your primary focus going to be? I'm not suggesting that you only focus on one element, but you need to think carefully about what is it the company really needs you to deliver, and can you influence them to be able to deliver that? So, and then the point around style, and style may or may not be the right word, but how do you turn up as a team? How do you turn up as an organisation within your business? Are you there as a service provider? Are you there as a sourcing house that does strategic sourcing and just sources products and services? Are you there to disrupt? Are you there to really challenge the thinking, stir up the pot, really push the exec team to go to a place they've never thought about before? Yeah? Or are you a production-focused organisation? You might maybe something else as well. I'm not saying any of these are right. This is what you've got to kind of figure out. Yeah? And then you've got to position. You've got to establish the reputation of your organisation, and you've got to dream big. If your goals and ambitions are down here, yeah, who's going to want to talk to you? What contribution are you going to make to the organisation? If you're spending, let's say, $5 billion a year and you're offering a very small return, then why are you even leading the function? Because that's not what the business expects of you. So you've got to be super ambitious, you've got to dream big, and really shoot for delivering something which is perhaps unheard of within the organisation. And you know what? People probably get fired more for being unambitious than they do for missing their goals. Yeah? When it comes to, so once you've decided where you're going to go, what you're going to head for and what have you, you need to figure out what operating model is right for your business and what you're trying to achieve. And when I kind of look at that, I kind of ask the question in terms of where you're starting from, where you're trying to get to, And what are the steps to get there? You know, I suspect we've all been guilty of trying to do it all at once at some point. I think you just need to be really mindful of what the reality of where you are at. You know, and for sure, what's right for you on day one will quite likely be something very different from what's right for you in 3, 4, 5 years' time. You know, and I think define and invest where the money's at. And when I say money, I don't actually mean it's all about the P&L. I mean, whatever's important to your organization, whatever you've defined as being important, that's what's kind of that's where your kind of hyper-focus needs to be. And there's a broad spectrum of models out there. There is no best practice, right? The best practice is not to believe in best practice, right? What I mean by that is you have to figure out what's important to your organization, as I've said. Then you need to figure out the right operating model for that, yeah? What's good for one company is not necessarily good for another. So avoid the pitfalls of familiarity. Just because you've seen it elsewhere doesn't mean that it's right for your new organization. It may be, but learn from that. Avoid the risk of falling into a techno fest very early on. You need to understand exactly where you're going and what's kind of important to your organization before you start making major or implementing major surgery on your technology landscape. And never talk about procurement for procurement's sake, because as somebody said earlier on, only procurement's interested in the procurement language. Yeah, everybody else is interested in what are you doing for our business. Okay, and then what kind of culture, ethos, and capabilities do you actually want to build as an organization? And the final point's an interesting one. And I think as a senior procurement leader, you need to kind of think about this quite carefully. Minimize the distractions and maximize the ROI. You come in to lead a new an organization that's new to you with some super ambitions that you've aligned with the exec team on. There's 1,001 things you could do. What are the 5 or 10 things you're going to do that will really make a difference? And how do you not spend all of your time managing the other 990 other things, yeah? So how do you do that? How do you be empathetically ruthless, yeah? And I think that's kind of what it takes to some extent. Anybody got any viewpoints on that? Am I simplifying it too much? Who wants to share a view? Can we just get a microphone down here? Thanks, just bear with me a sec. Just here.
Thank you anyway. It reminds me of an organisation I joined a few years ago, and I looked at the procurement team over the first couple of months, realised they were doing everything for everybody else and nothing really for procurement. So they were the telephone answering service, they ordered the toilet paper, which wasn't really strategic, and they were distracted with basic processes, very tactical. I spent a couple of months looking at them, and then over the Christmas break, I started off with a blank sheet of paper, and I wrote down, in my mind, the first thing that they should be focusing on, the second thing, and I came up with a list of about 25 or 28 areas to focus. And then I got to a point where I couldn't really think of much else. So in my mind, if I couldn't think of something immediately to add to that list, my team shouldn't be doing it. I used that list then to put together the priorities for myself, for my immediate reports, the managers, and for the senior buyers and buyers, cascaded out, created new roles and responsibilities, and then went about restructuring the team with the support of my director. Within 6 months, we dramatically improved contact with suppliers. We were no longer ordering the toilet paper or consumables. We'd improved costs, service levels in terms of goods coming in and therefore customer service going out the door. And I learned an awful lot from going through that process myself, and I got a lot of support. But I think more importantly, the change for the business was quite dramatic. So it was quite a dramatic change. And
How did the team feel about having to be ruthless on what their focus was?
4 of them didn't appreciate it because they left the business. So there were some cuts to be done. We reduced the team size, but overall it made a much more interesting work environment for the individuals who were left in the team, and development opportunities as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. So here's an interesting question to kind of ask yourself, just in terms of what you want to say about your team. But before I ask that, one sort of belief I've always had was procurement is fundamentally a commercial organisation. And ask yourself a question: is there anybody in your team you wouldn't give £20,000 of your own money to go buy you a car and believe they would get a fantastic commercial arrangement on that car? If there's anybody in your team where you don't feel confident about that, be very clear in your mind in terms of, can you develop them to get to that place? And if not, why are you comfortable letting those individuals look after tens, hundreds, and millions of pounds of the company's money? So that's kind of a first kind of point there. But in terms of what do you want your stakeholders to say about your team? Well, first of all, you want them to say, you know what? Love, love, love working with Jane or John. You know? They bring something to the table that I haven't got. They're commercially savvy. You know? I'd let them buy a car for me with my money. You know, they are understanding of my challenges. They're not walking around thinking about their own objectives only. They're actually really mindful of my position, what I've got going off in my world, and they help me navigate that. Having said that, though, they're quite challenging and they really disrupt my thinking, which sometimes I don't like. But in actual fact, it's a really positive place to be. So, you know, at the end of the day, me, the stakeholder or business partner, if you prefer, I really like working with Jane and or John, and you know what, great integrity, we're all kicking in the same direction. Yes, it's difficult sometimes, but they're on my side, and it's a lot of fun to work with them. Never comfy, never cozy, but really, really pushy. So I think that's a really helpful outlook that I've kind of stuck to for a long time, which is that's how I want people to talk about those within my team. And finally, it's kind of all about timing. As I said a moment ago, you know, we all want to address everything now, so we've got to be realistic about what we can achieve. We've got to be careful we don't strain the organisation with too much complexity. Because if you try and fix everything on day one, you'll lose sight of that key element, which is your return on investment as procurement to the organisation that you work for. And it's a bit like Nick said earlier on. He quoted the number which said 70% of digital transformations fail. Okay, that's not because the technology doesn't work. The technology does work. The reality is organisations, quite frankly, try and do too much at once and don't think and plan out how they're going to tackle the objectives they've got in front of them. So pick on the high impact, easy to execute activities first, build your reputation and get a clear focus. Fix what's broken first. It's very easy to say this. And then when you've got to that point where you've picked off that low-hanging fruit and you've delivered some fantastic returns, you get to a point where you kind of say, well, where's my reputation? And kind of reputation is built on one thing, and that's execution, execution, execution. You know, so if I want to make a case for investing 5, 10, 30, 40, 50 million pounds in procurement technology in the future, People are only going to do that, first of all, if I'm credible as a leader and as a team. They're also going to look at what my track record's been and say, do we actually believe in you in terms of the return you can deliver? And then on top of that, they're going to say, well, what's the growth plan? If we make this investment, what's the return going to be? I think that's really, really important. I think in the early days, actually making that case is very, very difficult. If you don't have the credibility as a leader, if your team doesn't have a reputation for delivery, and you've not got a clear plan on how you actually are going to grow value for the organization, whatever that value be, actually making an argument for investment is very challenging. So, I think that's probably about all I kind of wanted to say. Does this kind of make sense, or am I missing the point somewhere? What viewpoints? Can we kind of move into a bit of a question and answer session? Can we get a microphone? I think Simon wants to add something. Just here.
Thank you. I've had time to think about your question from the first slide now, Jim. So I think that first slide really sets it up because in my experience, having worked with a number of functions, value is in the eyes of the stakeholder. Value is in the eyes of the business. And so I've seen a lot of CPOs who are good at something go into an organization and get tissue rejection because they haven't understood what the organization's about and therefore calibrated procurement around it. Creative functions tend to work in creative industries. Digital functions tend to get great adoption in digital industries or supply chain industries. So I think figuring out how you add value, what value is in the eyes of your customer, is the start point. And then, as you've said, calibrate your operating model, dream big, cut the distractions, and go and achieve stuff. So I think it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Great point. Great point. Other viewpoints, opinions? So one over here.
Can we get the microphone over here, please? No, it's really for our online audience because they won't be able to hear your question. Actually, Simon, could you just tell us who you are and where you're from as well?
Yeah, so I'm Simon Gill. I work for Procurement Supply Chain Consultancy from Proxima.
We've got it there. Nice bit of filling time. Simon from Proxima, everyone. Thank you, Simon. Okay, if you can just start by saying your name and where you're from, please.
Thank you. My name's Gavin from NHS Supply Chain. What strikes me as you went all the way through this presentation is kind of almost the them and us nature between procurement and the rest of the organisation. And I'm sure that's not what you meant, but the reflection I have is that whatever organisation we're in, we're just one business. So this artificial separation that we start to build up about what procurement does and what procurement doesn't do, well, we don't do anything unless we procure and supply goods and services. So it's kind of the thing you really reinforced for me is how do you make sure that everything we do is just aligned to the core ethics or values of your business, and that's where you drive the value from. So that's really what you helped me reflect on, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure I caught all of the questions, so forgive me if I don't answer it appropriately, but in actual fact, what I'm kind of suggesting here is that procurement's role is that of a business partner, but its role is not one of being secondary in that partnership. It's one of in actual fact, being one where procurement are confident, have a strong stride, have their own opinions, will be ready to disrupt the current model, will be ready to challenge that business partner, and they don't always have to agree. And I think there's value in a separation, but there's also value in great collaboration. It's knowing how to play that and when to play it. Does that address in part, yeah? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your question, and thank you for a great session, Jim. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.